Hello, my name is Zachary Camarillo. I'm a English instructor for CAM-ASEAN, and today we're going to talk about prefixes and suffixes. So we're going to talk about both, but let's start with prefixes first. So you might be asking yourself, what is a suffix? What is a prefix? Well, it's in the word. Prefix, suffix, this is what we're doing. So, pre means before. Affix means attached. So, this is what we do. We have a word and we want to change the meaning, or we want to change the form. Well, I have to affix, I have to attach 3 letters to the beginning or to the end, 2 to 3 letters, to change the word. And that's all it is. Pre means before, suff means after. So we affix, we attach word to the beginning or to the end. Now, let's look. If we use a prefix, meaning before the word, before our main word, it means we're going to change the meaning. Okay, so we use the root word, that's what we call root, the main word, and we use a prefix to change the meaning. Pre means before, so before the word to change meaning. So like, for example, happy is the main word, and I want to change the meaning. So sad, I could say, or I can modify my word and change it to mean sad as well. So un means not, so unhappy means not happy. That's all prefixes are doing. Let's take a look. Root word, main word, it can be any word. It can be a noun, can be a verb, can be an adjective. This is how we modify almost any word in English. It's how we build vocabulary and even make our own words. Sometimes it's the only way to change the meaning of a word. Well, let's take this for an example. We have a noun. Okay, so noun, ice. So I have a noun, ice. We should all know what ice means. So if I want to use a prefix, that means I want to change the meaning. Okay, so it doesn't matter what the meaning is. Ice is a noun. So we have to think about it. What do I want to say with this noun? Maybe I want to say there is ice or remove ice. Okay, so there is ice on my moto. So instead of changing it or making a lot of words, I need to remove the ice from my moto. I can just say de-ice. De-ice my moto. And that's all we're doing. I have a root word and I want to change the meaning. So de, because I want to remove ice. So de-ice. Now, there's a lot of examples, and it doesn't have to be de, it just depends on what you're trying to say. There are a lot of prefixes and a lot of suffixes. And you have to start to understand what these prefixes mean, because if you know what the prefix means, it does a lot. You can guess the meaning of the word. So we have a root word, and then I modify that. Let's take a look at some examples. So here are some examples of some prefixes. Now we have to be careful, because here we have an example right here, ante. And anti, they sound the same, but we spell them different. A-N-T-E means before. A-N-T-I means against, negative. You don't want it. So we have to be careful. We have to be careful because we can easily make the wrong meaning. But this is why it's important for you. I can guess the meaning of some words, and I can try to understand some words that we don't understand just because I know what this prefix means. If I know that anti always means against, you don't want it, you don't like it. Anti, against, well, I can take the root word of something, okay? So we'll take this one. depressant. So, depress means sad. Anti means against sadness. So antidepressant is something that fights or goes against being sad. So this is what we mean. This is how a lot of formal words are created. A lot of new words are created this way. So if someone needs a word to describe something, they use a prefix with a root word and they can change the meaning. So this is how almost any word gets created, especially when we talk about science. So let's take a look here. So pre means before. Pre is a prefix. Pre is a prefix just like anything else, and it means before. So let's look at some more examples here. So, how we build words. We have prefix to modify meaning, main word, and then suffixes change form. But we'll talk about suffixes in a bit. So, prefixes. Now, you learn them as you go. What I would recommend is treat these like vocabulary if you're lower level. Start learning these specific words. But what you'll notice is all of these words will have similar meaning because prefixes change meaning. So if you see a word like unhappy means not happy, unsuccessful means not successful, unable means not able, you can start to see the pattern. If I see a word with UN in the beginning, it must mean not. And then not what? Well, we have to take it from the root word. We have to take it from the main word. Remember, prefix changes meaning. So we take the definition of our main word and then we change that meaning with the prefix. Okay? And this is very common. Now, these are some common prefixes, but let's look at. Here's a bigger list. As you can see, it goes on for quite a long time. And these aren't the only ones. So when we change meaning, what we're talking about is it could be number, okay? Could be position. Could be positive or negative. Could be many different things. We can't just. Because here's the thing, we're adding meaning to a word. That word could be a noun, okay? So let's take a word that we might know. So we said noun, like ice, but D is remove, okay? But let's pick a different noun. It could be, so, bicycle. It's the same thing. We're using a prefix to modify a word. Bi means to. So this is what we mean. It could be number, okay? Could be positive or negative. Pro means yes. Con means no. So positive or negative. It could also be many different things. Opposite. Let's look at some of our examples again. So as you start to learn these prefixes, as you start to discover these prefixes, as you start to notice the pattern, what we need to do is kind of memorize it. It's hard to memorize all these words because prefixes are for any word. Nouns, verbs, adjectives. In the beginning, it's okay to memorize specific words, especially if you don't see them very often. But we have to start trying to memorize the prefix itself because it has a specific meaning, okay, and it really modifies that meaning in a specific way. So I want to look at another example, what to be careful for, okay? So let's see here. So we have some prefixes that are very similar. So un is not, dis is opposite. Okay? Now, they can be similar in meaning depending on what I'm talking about, okay? But we have to be careful. It has to make sense. There's not really any rules for when do I use not or un. When do I use dis? Well, some words we just learn disappear, okay? But here we have to be careful of how we're changing the meaning. Because both could be possible, but we have to really think about what is the word we're matching it with. What is the main word we're trying to change? So noun, verb, adjectives, these all are changed in different ways. So why do I say unhappy and not dishappy? Why? Why is this one wrong? Well, that's what we're trying to understand. What prefixes work with what words? And it can be kind of difficult to guess. So that's why I say start with the vocabulary and then memorize what these prefixes mean. So it just has to make sense. That's the only rule, okay? That's the only rule. Because emotion, happy, there's no real... Now you can say happy is maybe the opposite of sad, dishappy, but it doesn't quite make sense when we can just say not. So we really have to be careful. Let's look at some more examples. So some of these are shared, like hyper, over, above, in. It depends on what word we're using it for. So here's the thing. If we're looking here, in, not, in, into. Well, it depends on the word we're using. Here, to mean in, into is describing action. So we need to use them with action words. Import, inside. Then not can describe a situation, a feeling, okay? Or in this case, nouns. I know this gets a little confusing because there's so many. And you just have to start a little bit at a time. And you start to understand what they mean. Now some of these we've seen a lot. And some of these we haven't seen before. So let's start with these common ones. Just focus on the prefix and see the examples and try to understand the situation we're using it for. Noun, verb, adjective. So, un is not, okay? Unhappy, unsuccessful, unable. Re means again. Redo, return, reappear, okay? It just means again, appear again, okay? Do again. Dis is not or undo, opposite. Disappear, disgrace, discontinue. So you'll notice un we use with feelings or adjectives. Dis with verbs, okay? Inter, between, non, not. Pre is before. Post, after. Poly, many. Sub, under. Co, together. And this is how we build any word. So for like example, I want to say it's below freezing. Sub, zero. Things like this, okay? Same thing, we have a way, a road. Could be subway. the road under the ground. And this is just how we build all kinds of words. Now let's look at a bigger list. As you can see, we need to go through a lot to start to understand. Now the more you read, the better you get at this, because you have to just see more examples. The more examples you see, the easier it is to understand. And you kind of learn what prefixes go with what words. And you definitely don't need all of these, okay? And why this is important is because it's very common in science or anything technical. Like I said, this is how we make words. This is how we build words that don't exist before. So to make your own word, that's what we need to do. So let's look at this example here. So root, remember, it's the main word. So we have a main word, Adam. Same thing, not cut. We can make almost any word from this. So atom is the smallest piece inside of everything. Okay? So atom is a noun, it's a thing. IC related to, sub below. Subatomic, below the size of an atom. Now, someone had to discover that there was something smaller than an atom. They had to make a word to describe that. So they use suffix and prefix. Now, prefixes are easier, I think, but suffixes you probably have more experience with. Okay, let's look at some more. Remember, let's just focus on the prefixes. D means opposite. Do the opposite. So D, because it's talking about opposite, doing the opposite, it's got to be related to this. Dis, opposite of. Well, what's the problem? Do the opposite or opposite of? Well, that's what we mean. Opposite of a situation, opposite of an adjective. Do means action, okay? We're talking about doing something, action related. So D for action, dis for describing adjective or situation. In means not or into. Miss means bad or badly. So misbehave, behave badly, okay? Miscount, count incorrectly. Mid means middle. Midday, midsummer. Pre is before, re is again. Tele means distant, like telephone or television. And un means not. Now, let's think about this in two ways. What you should do is memorize the ones that you see quite a bit. D, dis, in, miss. These ones, pre, re. Now, words like tele, it's not that common. Telephone, television, that's it. You're probably not going to experience more words with that very often. Telescope, maybe. Okay? So that's what I mean. Some of these are going to be more common where you can start to memorize the prefix and think about how the meaning changes. And some of them you're just going to have to treat like vocabulary. Okay? So let's continue with our prefixes. So some more examples of what we're talking about. Let's actually go to some. Here, I have a better thing for us. So let's look here. We have prefixes. So nouns, verbs, adjectives. We can look through this together, and let's try some of these. So, as we see here, we have, now this is what I'm going to do here. Let's find the word first to go with the sentence, and then we'll decide how do we want to modify it, okay? And we're going to try to use our modification words here. So let's see if we can use some of these. Okay, so he is going to blank on Tuesday. Going to means location. So location, we need a place. Well, let's find our words here. What is a word that means a place? So none of these yet. Any of these are places? Can we see a place yet? And we only have one place, school. It must be school. If he's going to, he needs to go somewhere. He needs a place. So we already know it's school. So now, school. Ooh, that's too big. Hold on. Okay, so we need a prefix now. We need a prefix to change the meaning. He is going to school on Tuesday. Okay. He could go to school on Tuesday, but remember, we're doing exercises. We need a prefix. So what prefix could go with school? What makes sense? Remember, we got to ask ourselves what makes sense, because let's be honest, I mean, I can use many of prefixes with school. So what makes sense? What could we be talking about? So, pre, because I know the answers. It's easier. Pre is what we're looking for. Preschool. So what do you think preschool means? If you never saw this word before, what would you guess? This is what we mean. We need prefixes to guess the meaning of words. If you know pre means before, and he's going to preschool, remember, it's a noun now. Preschool, we're putting it together. School is still a noun. Remember, prefix does not change form. The form of the word does not change. It's always going to be a noun. So it doesn't make sense to say preschool and think a time before school. That doesn't make sense. I'm not talking about an action. I'm not talking about a time. I'm talking about a noun. So what could preschool mean? Well, it's probably the school for little kids before school. Okay, like where little kids learn colors or little kids learn anything. It's just for children the age before school. If all children go to school at 5, well, what about kids before 5? Well, they can go to preschool, a special school for children too young for normal school. Now, you're not going to be able to know every word, but you really can use critical thinking. You can really think about it to try to guess the meaning. Because remember, prefix changes meaning, not form. If it's a noun, it will stay a noun. I'm just changing the meaning. Before school. And remember, it has to make sense. It has to fit the sentence. It has to fit what we're talking about. So pre is not the time before school, it's a place. It must be a place. What about number 2? You're to wait a little. Wait a little, that's a good hint. Here it is. We have the word here. Patient. Wait a little, patient. But remember, we're prefix, we have to change it. So you're to. To is too much, not good. So, what do you think we should use here? I would say, because I know, Im, not. Im, not. So, im, patient. Impatient, not patient. Now, you got to ask yourself, why not unpatient? Well, that's a good question, and that's kind of where we have to treat this like vocabulary, because there are prefixes that mean the same, but we use them for different situations. They mean the same, but we use them for different situations. Unfinished, unfriendly, undone. Impossible, impatient. It's very common. Now, and here's the good news. Even though some words are formally decided, like we decided a long time ago that it's unhappy, not dishappy, or it's impatient, not unpatient, but the reality is, because the prefix means the same, you're still going to be understood. So that's the good news. As you're learning these, it's okay to make mistakes. If you say unpatient instead of impatient, I still can guess what you mean. I know what un means. I know what im means. They mean the same. You probably mean the same. And these are common mistakes that even native speakers make. It's quite all right. Remember, there's not really too many rules as to what prefix goes with what kind of word. It has to make sense, though. It has to make sense, though. It just has to. If it doesn't make sense, then I probably need a different prefix. So let's try some more. So what about this? This source of information is, well, I'm going to go with the next word here, because it could be many different words, but I want to say reliable. What does reliable mean? It means I can trust it. Something I can trust is true. Okay? So the source of information is reliable. It could be that. But remember, we're prefixing. We want to change the meaning. So reliable, adjective, to mean something is true. So we have to think of a prefix. What would go with this situation? Something is true. And we want to change the meaning. Well, true, we don't have many choices. It's either true or not true. So, since it's true here, I want to change the meaning. I'm going to have to change the meaning to a not. Okay? So, just like we said, unreliable. And this is what we're trying to do. Modifying the meaning of the word, but each root word, each main word has a definition, and we cannot change that definition. That's what's guiding us to decide. That's what's helping us decide what prefix should I use. Because remember, it has to make sense. I have to modify it correctly. Okay? Like I can't say pre. I can't say pre-reliable, because pre means before, and reliable means something is true. So it just doesn't make sense. How can something be before true? We can't mix them. They don't make sense. The meaning is not there. So this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to see what makes sense. We really have to use critical thinking here, because there's more than one option. And like I said, there's not a lot of rules to help you decide. Your main rule is, does it make sense? Does the prefix, does the meaning of the prefix, does it match, does it fit, does it go with our root word, our main word? I blank with you, you're wrong. Well, agree is probably our answer here, obviously. Agree. So, but you're wrong. Agree means I think you're right. So what do you think is the correct prefix? Take a guess. So you remember, you know what agree is. You know you're trying to get some other meaning from agree. I can't use time, really. I can't use number. I can't use position. Agree, there's only one other possible option. It's to not agree. Okay? So, once again, does the prefix fit the word? Does it fit our situation? Now, if we're saying a word like agree, a lot of you already know. Disagree. Disagree. Why not unagree? Well, once again, it has to fit with the type of word. Okay? We use to describe a feeling or a situation. Unhappy. Okay? Unsuccessful. We're describing the situation. Now, agree is not a situation. Agree is a verb. Okay? So we have to make it fit with dis. Because we often use dis, not, for the verb. Disagree. Not unagree. And this is going to be the hardest part about this. Prefixes are generally easy. They have a meaning, and that's it. Use that meaning to change the root word. But when you're making your own prefixes, when you're making your own words, you have to always remind yourself, what makes sense here? Okay? What can we possibly do? It has to make sense, it has to fit. Okay, let's do another one. Let's see. Okay, well, let's do this one. Your homework is we're going to use the root word accurate. Accurate. We're going to use this root word. So accurate means correct. No mistakes. Now, accurate, what kind of word is it? Okay. Accurate means correct. What we're trying to say is not correct, but correct is not a word we can use for un. Because remember, un is for feeling. Un is for situation. Accurate, okay, we're describing is it correct or not. No mistakes. So what could we use for accurate? Well, in. Because we want not, okay, but we have to use it in a special way. We want not, but we have to use it with a verb, or we have to use it with what we're describing here. We should say in. Now, that's the hard part, because in, accurate, but im is also possible. These are all the same. You just have to kind of learn what words sound correct. So, it's half vocabulary for words you already know, and then it's also how are you going to modify words you want to use already. So let's look at our examples again. So let's just try to guess some meanings now. We know how to build words, like how do I build the word, but maybe you don't need to build the word. Maybe you see a word and you don't know what it means. So let's go again. So let's take a look. What we have here, let's just take a word that we know, appear. So appear, it has a word, there's a root word, there's a meaning. I see a word, it has meaning. Appear means show, okay? Most specifically, show myself. So I reappear, I show again, I show myself again. And that's how you have to use these prefixes. So one way is I have a root word, I need to pick the correct prefix to change the meaning. Another way is I see a word, I never see this word before, but I want to guess the meaning because I recognize a word. Violent means to use violence. Violent. Non is not. Non-violent. Non specifically is negative. Okay? So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to guess meaning from words using prefixes. This one's a good one. Marine. Marine means water. Sub means below. So submarine means something below water. So it's important. Prefixes we use to make our own words, and prefixes we use to understand words that we might not be sure about. Words that are familiar but we're not sure about. Okay? So just what we have to remember. Prefix changes the meaning. Prefix changes the meaning. Okay. Now let's take... So prefixes are there. We'll give you some more work to practice them. It can be difficult. What you need to focus on is memorize. What are the meanings? And look at the patterns. What words do they go with? What are the common usage of the words? And if you see a word you don't know, try not to look up the definition in the dictionary. Use the prefix and the root word to try to guess the meaning. And then check. You can check the dictionary to see if you're correct. Okay? So this is prefixes. Now we're going to talk about suffixes. Okay? The next video we're going to talk about suffixes, so we'll practice that right now. All right, thank you for listening to me about prefixes. If you have any questions, you can always ask. And try the work. We will include the worksheet if you want to try it yourself. So that's prefixes. Next video will be suffixes.